Welcome to Facebook Live with Citizens Against Government Waste. We are very pleased today to be here with Federal Communications Commissioner Mike O'Rielly, who has been with the Commission as the Commissioner, or a Commissioner, since 2013.
That's right.
Then was renominated and confirmed again in 2015. So your term ends next year, I believe, right?
Actually, June 30th.
June 30th.
Official, but we'll see how it goes.
Oh, this year?
Definitely this year.
Ah, so hopefully this is not your last opportunity to talk to people about what you're doing at the FCC.
We'll just see how it goes.
All right, good. Well, we very much appreciate your being here then.
Thank you so very much.
And I know you've been very involved in a number of issues, and while there are a lot of disagreements, both in Washington and across the country, one thing everybody agrees on is that they hate robocalls, especially the ones that spoof a local phone number, and then it turns out to be somebody speaking Chinese or some other language, or
Sure.
the ones in particular that come from a hospital, looks like something's wrong with the family member. It just drives everybody crazy. I know the FCC is involved, and the Senate has done something as well, so what has the FCC done, and what else can be done?
Well, a number of steps. And one thing I hope to educate people on is that it's not just robocalls. We really want to focus on illegal robocalls, because there's a category of robocalls that are very beneficial. They're the school closures that you didn't know was them. They're the power company that there was closure of pipes or an explosion that is happening, and they're going to tell you when the power is going to come back on. That's something you want to happen. The other nuisance calls that you mentioned are mostly and generally overseas, and we've been trying to figure out how do we get at those calls, how do we stop it, because it's so cheap to make those calls today. And there's a lot of different practices. You mentioned spoofing, a lot of different things that different creative people, mainly fraudulent and illegal activity, are causing the most problems for consumers, and we're really trying to target on it. We've done a couple actions already, try to get at the neighborhood spoofing issue. We have another item on this month. We're trying to get at how do we give consumers more ability to protect themselves from getting these calls, to use blocking technology, to actually have the authority given to their provider, the telephone company, to be able to block these calls on their behalf. We want to make sure we get that right, though, that it's the right balance, that we not block the important calls that they want.
Right. And so I've also noticed there's a difference between how much you can block on the mobile phone versus a home phone. Is that a technology question? Because it seems to be unlimited on a mobile phone, and at home, after about 6 of them, you're kind of stuck, and then you just have to not answer.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, we implement the law, we don't make the law, and the law treats the two different technologies different, and so there are more ability to contact your landline phone, your old traditional copper telephone line, than there is your mobile phone. So we try to balance that out, but we have to respect what Congress has done.
Right. So the Senate has passed the Trace Act. It was a 97-to-1 vote, which is, again, highly unusual these days. And I noticed it would create more penalties, extend the statute of limitations, give many more agencies enforcement powers over these calls. Is the FCC supportive of that legislation?
Well, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but
I
think all of us have articulated views in favor of the legislation. It's something that passed overwhelmingly in the Senate, and then we'll see what happens in the House. I know they're looking at different legislative ideas that they've had, and I've supported some of those. There are new authority provided by the Congress that's going to be helpful to us, and that's why I'm genuinely supportive of that effort.
Right, and we keep the FCC as the lead agency, I presume.
Well, we work in partnership with the FTC, our sister agency. They have a portion of this, and we work in partnership with that.
Okay, good. So let's go to 911 fee diversion. You've been very involved in that. You wrote a letter in April to the 3 worst offenders. You call them habitual offenders, or something like that. Rhode Island, New Jersey, New York.
That's right.
Highest percentage abuse, and also the dollar abuse, $276 million in 2017 alone. What does 911 diversion mean, and why is it a problem?
Sure. So these are the fees that consumers are charged on a monthly telephone bill for their mobile service, and it'll be a couple dollars, it'll be $1.50 or $1, depends on the location, depends on both the locality or the state, imposes this fee, and then they take a portion of that, in some instances a large portion of that, and spend it on something totally unrelated. They take it and spend on general revenues for all their other ideas, and only a portion of that goes to the emergency call center to keep that call center operational. In some instances, like in New York, where I'm originally from, I went and visited my hometown and saw what happens at that local call center there, and they have to use tax dollars to make up the difference, because they're not going to let their consumers, not going to let their citizens have sub-service. They want to make sure they have full operational service. So that means their consumers paying twice. They're paying on their telephone bill, or their mobile bill, and then they're paying higher real estate taxes to make up the difference. So it's a double taxation from the consumer perspective, and then the politicians in the localities and the states get to spend the dollars as they see fit. It's outrageous that they're allowed to do this. I've likened it to stealing, and if it was a private company that was doing this, and it was in our jurisdiction, we'd be all over them as an agency. We would fine them, we'd probably put them out of business by now. In states and localities, I've written a number of letters, states and territories I should say, and we've a number of letters, number of activities. I brought with us the latest report from the Commission on this activity, and we've done this for 10 years now, and we still have this behavior happening. It's outrageous from my perspective. It's something that needs to change, and I'm getting converts in the Congress. A number of different legislative ideas are coming forward that I think will help improve the situation. Put the heat on those three and three others that we're trying to deal with that came out in the 2017 report.
Right, I noticed one had at least 90% of the fees being diverted
90%, New York,
yeah,
90%, New Jersey in the high 70s, and Rhode Island in the high 60s. Can you imagine taking 90% of the dollars that you're collecting for this fee and spending on something unrelated? It's outrageous. It boggles my mind. And as someone who has a responsibility over this, it's something I spend a great deal of time trying to figure out how to solve.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can get it done. I mean, you can't throw them in jail, I guess, at this point. I mean, a lot of threats of politicians being thrown in jail these days, but I guess we can't get the states.
Well, I don't have that authority, but if Congress were to give me that authority, we would exercise it, but I don't see that coming.
Right. So, as everybody has seen on television, lots of ads about 5G and a lot of these private companies making progress in certain areas of the country. I know the FCC has done a lot to deregulate, and I'd like to hear some more about that. And beyond that, there has been talk about nationalizing 5G. I know President Trump recently said that's not a good idea, but there was still a lot of rumblings out there from certain quarters that like this idea. So what has the FCC done, and how do we keep ourselves competitive with these other countries where they really do have nationalized 5G, like China? And we shouldn't copy them. So what can we do, and what has the FCC done? Well,
we should reject that whole nationalization effort that other countries are doing, like China. That's a totally different governmental model that we do not support in our nation. So what the FCC has done, and my colleagues and I are in agreement, it's going to be a private sector-led effort to get 5G services nationwide. And not only are wireless providers today going to lead what they do today in offering 4G service, they're going to lead in 5G. And we're going to make sure that they have the resources they need to make that happen. That includes making sure they have the spectrum they need, so reallocating bands for 5G service, making sure the regulatory environment that they face locally and the burdens that we put on the FCC are as minimal as possible. And three, it means making sure that they have the ability to deploy technology. It means dealing with the local governments to get the new cell towers and cell sites and small cells built out so deployment can happen as soon as possible. So that'll help deploy 5G domestically. We've been trying to make sure that that fight is happening internationally, and the other countries don't use unfair advantages, take it in detriment to our own country and to our own providers. One of the ideas that's been kicked out, as you mentioned, is this 5G network, this 5G nationalization, that the government would build, or government would sponsor, or the government would provide some kind of resource like free DoD spectrum to some entity, and then they would build a network, and then people would, then providers would use that, and consumers would be used off it. There's a ton of reasons why that's completely bogus and why it will never work. Number one, I'll give you just one example. DoD spectrum is so valuable. If we were able to convert it for private sector use, which I've been trying to do on multiple bands, it's been incredibly hard to do. But if we were, we're certainly not going to give it to just a random company and say, here, you go and take this valuable spectrum and make a business model out of it. We've seen reports, the companies that would like to do this have said, it'd be great, we think we can offer the service. If it doesn't work, well, at least we have this free spectrum from the government. That's a rip-off to the American taxpayer. So I don't think that it's going to get any legs on it. It keeps kicking around, as you mentioned, keeps kicking around in the conversation, but I don't see that actually getting, getting real legs. And then what I think is important from my perspective is I went through the substantive reasons of why this is just wrong. And that's what's hard to do in D.C. Lots of people will spin different stories. When you really break down the substance, you realize that this is a fraud on the American consumer and American taxpayer. And so I don't see this going along that path.
Because the government does everything else so well that it controls. And it's probably one of the best examples of a business the government should not be in. And just so that viewers can understand it a little better, what are the advantages of 5G to the average American, somebody looking at us on Facebook and saying, why are you talking about 5G? What is it? And kind of who cares? But we should care.
Sure. And you should care. and you should know that 5G is a little bit undefined. It means you're going to have a better wireless experience. It means faster speeds, lower latency, more capacity. And it means all that for the average consumer. But it means more than that, because it's going to be integrated into every part of your manufacturing, in your business, in every wearable technology that's out there. It's going to be an overlay service. So 4G is not going to go away. The current service we have, usually they replace each other. 3G replaced by 4G. Well, 5G is not going to replace 4G. It's going to stay, and it's going to be an overlay to the 4G. And the 5G service is going to be, integral to all types of business activity that we can't comprehend today. We talk about autonomous cars. We talk about remote surgery. All these business models that we can envision what might work with having such capacity, having such speeds and low latency. All those things we think what can happen. It's just getting the technology out into the marketplace as soon as possible.
Right, because we read a lot about healthcare manufacturing, and certainly healthcare remote areas where you literally can't get to, but it might be a local doctor, can go online,
get a doctor
information,
in America.
Right, and so this is a big deal along the rural broadband lines, which I know you've been involved with as well, and bridging the digital divide. It's all part of the same thing. So just briefly, before we close, these international issues, you spoke about this at the Brooklyn 5G Summit. There have been a lot of efforts to keep particularly foreign technologies, the Chinese especially, out of certain areas related to national security. Huawei, of course, is a big deal because the president has said, let's keep them out. Why is this important? Because they're going to spy on us and steal more of our technology, or is it a bigger issue than that?
Well, it's bigger than that, but that is definitely part of the equation. We had an application for the Commission to approve by a company called China Mobile, and the Commission had shown that the great probability with the conversations and filings by other government agencies that you were going to have the instances of espionage and the data being sent back to China. That's dangerous for our national security, because it's not just the everyday you and me and the conversations that we have. There's a lot of government communications that happen, and they use multiple different sources. And the idea that all the traffic would potentially go through China in some capacity, but the ability to siphon off that data and dissect it at some point in the future, really problematic to our national security. We can't let that happen. There's the second part of it is what they're trying to do internationally is they're trying to grow country by country, using all of their tentacles, all of their opportunities, all of their financing to expand into areas and undercut our prices by so low, undercut the private sector companies that we cherish in the United States. They're undercutting them so much to gain market share and using all the revenues from the Chinese government to do so. Incredibly problematic for what it means for the growth of wireless services for the long term. Because it's not just about 5G, it's about the next, it's about 6G, what 7G looks like, and what is it, how does that play into manufacturing for the next 2 millennium kind of thing. It's that important.
And we've led the way on all of the other generations of technology in mobile applications, and this is one
we've had our moments. There's some that we've done very well with, and some we've done poorly on. 4G we've done exceptionally well on, given the model that we had in the United States, given the work that we've done, given the investment by our providers, and that's the same thing that's going to happen if 5G, if we let it.
Anything else you want to let our viewers know, or anything else?
Well, I want them to know that I'm working really hard on a couple different things. One is I'm working on a cap on the Universal Service Fund. That's the money that we charge consumers, we charge businesses who then take it from consumers, and we use that for multiple different purposes. It's about an $11 billion program. We're spending about $9 billion of that a year, and I want to put a cap on the top of that and make sure that we know how much we're taking from consumers today. Make sure that the bill that they're paying can be only so much. It's not going to harm our programs or have any impact on that, but it's something near and dear to my heart, and hopefully consumers will find that beneficial.
Right. And I know you've been trying that, we've been supporting that for a while, and I know it was a lot more difficult under the last administration, and so hopefully we can get this done now.
That's true.
Well, thank you very, very much. Wonderful to see you, and good luck with hopefully not just the rest of your term now, but something in the future as well.
Thanks so very
much.
It's
good to see you. Thanks.
My pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good.
Good?